You have reached the deepest depths of the internet. If it is greatness you seek, you've come to the wrong show. If it's about not wasting time, don't worry, you're never going to get your time back. If it's knowledge you seek, just be aware, any knowledge gained here is going to be minuscule. So now it's time for Accost with Tony Gerdeman on the Ozone Radio Network.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very special edition, the Friday edition of Across the Field. Well, maybe not very special, just a special edition, I guess, maybe. Tony Gerdeman here with Tom Orr and our producer Shannon Sommers. Tom, how's it going?
It's good. I mean, if I'm here, how special can it really be?
That's sort of why that's what brought me down as well. Shannon, how are you doing?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, but, so since he said it, thanks.
Welcome to a below-average edition.
Make sure make sure you clean your sheets on the couch there, Uncle.
I don't know what that means. That's no tagline. You know what? Dang it. I did look for a tagline this week, but I only looked for one because I forgot that we'd be recording two shows because, of course, we are, because there's a lot to talk about. So I guess remember to clean your sheets, Uncle. Let's get to the show.
In my panicked mind right now, literally the only thing I can think is stupid, sexy Flanders, which is, I mean, terrible but better than Shannon's. So there you go. It's the stupid, sexy Flanders edition.
Now I can just see now I see him wiggling in his ski outfit. Stupid.
Well, see, it's just, the uncle that's sleeping on the couch, we're just hoping that he's taking care of the sheets. So when visitors come by, that it's not all, the couch isn't all stinky.
Shannon, I think you have a hobo living with you.
I'm still totally unclear if this is a literal thing or some kind of really complicated metaphor.
I don't think it's complicated.
No, it's not. It's just the unwanted welcome, or, it's when your uncle that comes to visit and he never leaves. That's supposed to be the joke.
Again, Shannon, I think you have a hobo living with you. Have you found
his name is Tom?
Do you
I ride the rails.
Are you missing potatoes? Random potatoes that go missing, or maybe a knife that you have that is now no longer in the knife block. Just be careful.
The hash is really good.
Well, yeah, there are benefits to having a hobo live with you. Just be careful. And
I was so proud I didn't derail last show, but here, right back into the groove.
I believe that's a rut.
Gutterball.
So, we left off last show with talking about. I wanted to. Sorry, I'll speak better now. Wanted to talk about the safeties because we talked to the quarterbacks and safeties this past week, and we didn't get to Alex Grinch and his group. And Tom, for me, when I watch Alex Grinch, we get to see him close up coaching because he's one of the few position groups that will be near us in our little kiddie corral, the size of what you get at like Giant Eagle when you stuff your kids in there when you go shopping. I'm sure, Tom, you do this. You're like, I put the kids in the kiddie corral, let them play some N64 because that's all, Giant Eagle will spring for. But so we're all crammed in there, but we get to see the safeties, and Alex Grinch looks like he's having a pretty good time. And thinking of where he's been, Missouri and Washington State, and now he gets to work with Ohio State recruiting. And he said one of the things that is different about Ohio State is that they have big speed backed up by big speed, which is, these linebackers that they have that can run for days. They've got the, and now my phone is going off because I said big speed instead of Bixby, which, the Samsung. But these linebackers, these defensive linemen, there's just so much for him to work with. Are you okay, Tom? But, Tom, go ahead and say something. I've got to deal with my phone.
I had no idea who Bixby was, so I was real confused. But a Samsung now I think we know who the hobo is. Gert has a Samsung for a phone. It's all coming together. Just his Samsung phone and his bundle on the end of tied to the end of a stick, riding the rails. It's all the whole picture's coming together. Now I understand Shannon's metaphor.
You know,
Well, he's not allowed to have his phone in the house, so because we don't want it to catch on fire.
Bixby is that like the Japanese ask? Is that like Japanese Ask Jeeves?
It's the personal assistant on the phone that tells you like, oh, we're on fire. So
Battery's too hot.
Exactly. Tony really might need a sink right now. But it's pretty cool. It tells me the temperature. That's about all I've trained it to do so far. It's like a Furby, but you can't really cuddle with it, unless you get a case that has, fur on it. Oh, that's a good idea. Hey, Bixby, search Amazon for furry cases. Oh, that's a dangerous search.
At least it'll keep you.
Make sure your safe search is on.
Warm in the winter.
Exactly. Oh dear God, do not look at these searches. Yeah, so Tom, go ahead and talk about the safeties. And Alex Grinch. What? Not even the safeties, but just the ability to, or the fun that a coach that comes from outside of Ohio State, when they get to Ohio State and see what they get to work with, you sort of see this energy that he has with all of the things that he gets to work with, even though he's only working with the safeties right now, pretty much.
Yeah, he like you said, he talked about the big speed, and I think he basically has had big before, and he's had speed before. And, at Missouri or at Washington State, you get good players, you get power conference players, but it's like, okay, we've got our big guys and we've got our fast guys. Like if you think about like an Indiana has some of those fast skill guys who you go, oh wow, that guy's really carving up Ohio State's defense. And they have, some big guys, but they don't, it's not ever in the same person. It's not the same person can do both things. They can do one or the other. Ohio State, the way they've been recruiting, it's like everyone can just do everything, and they're all really good at it. So have fun. And I think Alex Grinch figured that out very quickly. Alex Grinch probably knew that was the case even before he got here, but he certainly seems to be enjoying having all of these fun toys to play with as he's going through his depth chart. Because you've got to think. There's probably 4 guys really in the running for that boundary safety position, and how many of those guys would have started on his Washington State defense last year? Probably at least 3. That's a whole lot of talent that he has to work with this year that he has not had in the past. And it's like when you upgrade your phone, which that's a metaphor Gert obviously won't be able to relate to, but for all the rest of you who have upgraded your phones at some point in the last 6 years, when you get that new phone, it's like, oh wow, look at this incredible stuff it can do. That's what he is basically. He has the new upgraded camera. He can do the turn yourself into an emoji. That's what the safeties are. The Ohio State safeties are the football equivalent of turning yourself into an emoji. So that's sort of what he's coming into and why he seems excited. Now the flip side of that is the expectations at Ohio State are great. You have all these incredible players, so you probably shouldn't ever give up a first down. So that's last year with the not as good players at Washington State, they gave up 42 points to Michigan State. Free advice: do not give up 42 points to Michigan State next year. Do not give up 37 points to Cal, and I think they gave up 58 to Arizona. If you happen to play Arizona this fall, don't give up 58 points to Arizona, even if it's in basketball. Don't do it. So there's good and there's bad. Right now, he's just enjoying the good.
If Ohio State happens to play Arizona this year, Grinch has already failed. So let's just put that out there now. The depth that he has now, and like you said, he would have speed or size. That's one of the reasons why his defense at Washington State, he realized, let's just go after speed, and then we'll put that speed to good use. And now he can do that with bigger players at every position. what he said, the way he termed it is the talent on the defense gives him, he's got a lot of get out of jail free cards on defense, meaning, something goes wrong, one of these guys can still make a play. However, I'm thinking they had those guys last year and it sort of got them into trouble in that they were too busy getting out of jail and they weren't, not enough of the time was spent staying, on the straight and narrow, with Jerome Baker or Dante Booker or Chris Worley, because with the play actions against Oklahoma, against Iowa, I mean, none of that was, all of these guys are good athletes. They can do, they are the big speed that he's talking about, but there's too much freelancing, too much looking into the backfield, too much of that counting on your ability to get out of jail free. And it's nice to have, but we saw last year that you can't survive on it because you still need to pass go, collect 200. You still have to buy rental properties, Tom, Shannon. You still have to have a chance to land on free parking. And if you're not out there putting properties out on, the yellow ones and obviously Park Place and Boardwalk, screw Baltic Avenue. Nobody cares about, the ghetto.
That's basically Rutgers Avenue.
But Shannon?
Yes?
I'm just checking to see if you're there.
Well, I figured there was no question. So.
I was too busy, lost in thought on Monopoly. Do you think all of these athletic players are fine, but they need more discipline this year than they had last year?
For the safeties, yeah, I mean, you definitely have to have some discipline. I mean, it just...
Well, even the safeties were fine last year. I'm talking like linebackers specifically. Because when we talk about big speed, that we're sort of talking about the front seven. But just the way that Baker Mayfield toyed with them, the way that what's the Iowa quarterback's name? I can't even remember anymore.
Nate Staley.
Nate Stanley. Stanley, whatever.
Yeah, Paul Stanley.
Yeah, Michael Stanley. Well, that's only people in Cleveland know that name. But no, it's just as far as, one of the biggest issues that the Buckeyes seem to have, especially with the linebackers, was getting lost in coverage. And that's where, everybody just, like you said, Bradford and, not Bradford, geez, I'm just whatever.
10 years ago, dude.
God. But yeah, it's just,
Jamel
the
Holloway.
quarterbacks for, yeah, So, it's just this, you definitely have to, the biggest key is just they have to cover their guys and when they're going onto the secondaries as far as being help and stuff like that. So I think that's one of the biggest things that seemed to be lost last year. And the year before you had Raekwon, he was pretty good at that, which kind of helped the other linebackers kind of, do their thing. So you need somebody in order to be able to step up. And we didn't have that last year.
Going into last year, we were talking about how this could have been maybe the most athletic trio of linebackers in Ohio State history, because we all know what Jerome Baker could do. And there was someone on the team who said Dante Booker could do more and he's bigger. And we all assumed Chris Worley was, hey, he was a former safety. He can obviously run, but he's pulling out like 4.8s and stuff like that, and not the most athletic guy going through these drills, which I guess was sort of a surprise and a disappointment. Maybe that's when we start to see why maybe they weren't as good as they should have been. But, Tom, it's sort of like, it's a lot like what we talked about maybe last week or the week before at defensive end. They lose 3 very talented guys, but the guys who are there now may be more talented. And I think that's sort of the case at linebacker as well. This is a more talented group of guys because we all want to see Baron Browning out there. Urban Meyer never fails to mention Pete Werner. I still like Keandre Jones a lot. I think he's up there with Baron Browning for me in terms of what guys I want to see. And Malik Harrison probably is as close to having a job locked up as anybody at linebacker other than Tough Borland. But can't this group, don't you see a more talented group this year than last year?
Yeah, I don't think there's a question about that. I mean, the depth of the talent there, just in terms of physical skill and football IQ, the way the coaching staff talks about the football IQ of some of these guys, I don't think there's any question that the ceiling's a lot higher there this year than it was last year. Last year, I mean, that linebacker unit just fell on its ass last year for a huge chunk of the year. And for a team that won the Big Ten Conference, won the Cotton Bowl, beat Penn State, beat Michigan, beat Wisconsin, beat USC, this is a position where there could be a significant upgrade in the play at this unit this year. So if you were able to do all that last year with a linebacker unit that, Jerome Baker at one point pretty famously graded himself a D- or something. I mean, what would you grade the play of the whole linebacker unit last year? A C, maybe.
Yeah.
It wasn't great. That's a place where you have the potential for a real serious upgrade from a team that won a New Year's Six game and went 12-1 or 13-1. I mean, 13-2 or 12-2. There were numbers involved. It doesn't matter. I'm not here to talk about the past. You have a potential for a serious upgrade at a position, and that's not something you can say often about a team that finished, top 4 or 5 or whatever it was in the country.
Yeah, and like linebacker or like defensive line we talked about, these guys these 3 are going to the NFL, but the guys being left are possibly better. Well, we know Bosa is. We assume Chase Young is. They're better draft prospects. And you look at the guys who are left behind. All of these former 5-star guys at linebacker who you would assume they're going to be more than what Chris Worley was or what Dante Booker is, who was also a former 5-star guy but hasn't been able to put it together. I think there's more possibilities than there were last year, because last year, where would they be without Tough Borland as a redshirt freshman? And where would they be without Malik Harrison as a true sophomore to sort of bail these veterans out? And I think the younger they got last year, the better they looked, which is a good sign for this year. I know that you still have people, as they're listening to this, they're like, yeah, well, what about Billy Davis? And, is that a valid concern? We don't know that it's not. But what we also know is that Greg Schiano is spending more time with the linebackers. He floats around because he has no real job, basically. $1 million, $1.5 million to do whatever, whatever you feel like. It's like he's got his own, he's a homeschool kid or something. Hey, whatever. I'm just kidding. I have a niece who's homeschooled. I know it's very regimented. Please, no more 1-star reviews on iTunes. Okay, please.
Is maybe your niece can one up you in the spelling bee if she's homeschooled? Since we know you couldn't hack it last week we learned that.
Shannon, please edit that portion out. I will not be made sport of on this show, especially not for spelling abilities that are pretty good for a 5th grader.
Pretty good.
Pretty good. Almost 6th grade level. That's what I've heard. That from the feedback I've gotten. So yeah, put that in your pipe, and then also smoke it. What were we talking about? Football?
At one point, yes.
FOOTBALL. With the Greg Schiano coaching. Not coaching linebackers, but hanging out there. I think that's one of the things we sort of expected when Alex Grinch was brought in, because that's, if you look at a weakness on the coaching staff, even to call it a weakness, I think that's unfair, because anybody that's coaching at Ohio State is pretty good, no matter what people say about Zach Smith, or, some people say the same thing about Ryan Day, and everybody has their critics, Tom. I don't know. That's what the internet, you're aware there's quite a bit of that on the internet. But Greg Schiano, wherever he goes, he's going to make that position better. Look what he did with Jordan Fuller last year, who had no business replacing Malik Hooker and doing it pretty well. But as we've talked about before, there was never an issue with Jordan Fuller. Damon Webb only got better like every single week. And now I'm seeing things this week from draft people who, granted it's Twitter draft people, but people who follow it and talk to scouts. And like Damon Webb is consistently rated as one of the top free safeties in the draft, even though, he's projected like a 7th round pick, but everybody likes what he does. It's probably, he's only going to run a 4.7 or something of that nature, but he's gotten the most out of his guys, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And if he's going to be working with the linebackers this year, that can only help. I mean, I think based on the way the linebackers played last year, I think if you asked Ohio State fans, like, well, how would you fix it? The answer is, like, I don't care. Just whatever you have to do. It's different players. If it's, additional coaches there, if it's an additional, a different scheme, like whatever, I don't care. Just fix it. And, I mean, you talked about this a little bit. People have really been on Billy Davis about how the linebackers looked last year. And, maybe that's fair and maybe that's not, but that was his first year. His entire track record at Ohio State is 1 year, and it was bad at his position group. So he has the opportunity this year. If the linebackers come out this year and the problems are solved, then you can say, okay, well, it was a personnel issue last year, and then Billy Davis is fine. If they come out this year again and there are more problems at linebackers, then, well, maybe it is a Billy Davis issue. So you're going to have an additional data point this year to sort of base your, if you're interested in having an informed opinion. And, this is the internet, so maybe you are and maybe you aren't. But if you're interested in having an informed opinion, you're going to have a much more informed opinion this year with that second year of data behind you to know whether, you've got a kind of controlled experiment here. So let's see how it goes. But if you've got Schiano there and you've got that talented group of players and you have Urban Meyer talking this week about how much he likes that linebacking unit, I mean, I think there are a lot of different reasons to feel like there's going to be a pretty significant leap there.
You know how Urban has said that he sort of was unhappy with the 2015 class, and Jerome Baker was part of that, and how he loves the 2017 class, likes the guys that are coming in this year, obviously likes Tuff Borland out of the 2016 class, and you wonder if, not that it's all on Baker, but a lot of those 2015 guys he's been waiting for them, and they started to come on last year. But I think they're missing what he really likes out of the 2017 guys and the 2018 guys that he hasn't even really seen yet, other than some spring practices and some workouts. There's just a different level to everything that they're doing at Ohio State. And I don't know, this may be an unfair characterization of Jerome Baker, but every time we talk to him after a bad game or whatever, he's always got a smile on his face, and he's never like angry. I talked to Isaiah Pryor on last week, Thursday or whatever it was, when we were over there Wednesday, and he said, he had a bad practice and he wasn't very happy about it. And he was kind of grumpy with other answers. Just, he wasn't happy, he wasn't satisfied. Whereas, Tom, did you ever see Jerome Baker when he wasn't like in a pretty good mood?
No, I don't think so. I mean, every time I think about him in my head, he's got a big smile on his face, which, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, Robert Landers is the same way, but everyone loves Robert Landers. So, this may be more of an on-field performance issue than a personality / facial expression issue.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know that it's a fair characterization, but it's just, I guess maybe we would expect somebody who didn't have the year they expected to be less happy about the year they're having. But that's, I like you, Tom, I'm expecting some better things from linebackers, simply, not just because of the talent and not just because of the coaching input. I think all of that. But at this point, there's only really, I can't see them being worse than they were. And they weren't terrible last year. They had some bad moments. They finished well, but there's expectations, and that group didn't meet them. I expect this group to meet them, and at that point, then once you meet them, you've got to exceed them and sort of reestablish the standard that went away last year, for sure. I wanted to finish up with the safeties, and I jumped over to the linebackers. But one thing that Isaiah Pryor told us was that he and Jordan Fuller have switched positions. Last year, Jordan Fuller played the free safety, or the strong safety spot, which was Malik Hooker's old spot, and Damon Webb was the free safety, which is the field safety, which is sort of the slot corner guy. And now Jordan Fuller will move over to that slot free safety spot, the field safety. Isaiah Pryor, who thought he was going to be that safety after the bowl game, has now moved to the boundary, the post, the deep safety, the center field guy. And I remember last year, early, maybe in fall camp, Greg Schiano talks about having the deep safety like Malik Hooker, who could go from red line to red line. And what the red line is, I think we've talked about it on this show at some point, but it's a red line going down the practice field, which is a few yards inside of the sidelines. And Malik Hooker could run from one red line to the other red line while the deep ball was in the air. That's how much ground he could cover. That's like the ideal safety that they want at Ohio State. And it's very, very rare, which is why Greg Schiano knew pretty early on that, by Malik Hooker being able to run from one red line to the other, he knew that he was special in that regard. And you sort of see the plays that he makes in practice, and you realize that he's special in every regard. But I asked him last year when Jordan Fuller was replacing him, like, do you have a guy who can do that? And he said, maybe. And the impression that I got was that it was not Jordan Fuller, because then we talked about him, but I think it was the young, true freshman Isaiah Pryor that he was sort of talking about, and that he wouldn't divulge it because you don't want to put that kind of pressure or spotlight on a rookie. But Isaiah Pryor, that's why I always thought he would end up at this position. That's why when I talked to him after the USC game, I'm like, so is Jordan Fuller going to be moving over to Damon Webb's spot? And he's like, no, I will. And that's why we always talk about, this guy is 6'2", 200 pounds. How is he going to do defending, these slot receivers? And it turns out that's not going to be his issue. That's Jordan Fuller's issue now, who is also 6'2", 200 pounds. But at least he came to Ohio State as a corner, and he's had some practice with that. But Isaiah Pryor will competing with Jocelyn Wint and Brendan White at that safety spot, while it looks like Amir Reep will be backing up Jordan Fuller, which is kind of an ideal position for Reep, who is a former cornerback himself. I think there's that job is still open, that post safety, but I don't know, Tom. The impression that I get is it's Pryor's, not that it's Pryor's job, but he's in the driver's seat right now. He reps first with the safeties. He reps as a starter, basically. And when we were out there the other day, it was Reep was repping with the starters, but that's because Jordan Fuller was hurt, had the orange jersey on. So I think it's Pryor's job to lose at this point. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that it would surprise me if it was not Fuller and Pryor back there to start the season. Just so people kind of understand the difference between the field safety and the boundary safety and what they're really doing in this defense. The field safety, you're covering, like Gerd said, you're covering a lot of those slot receivers. You're playing a lot more man coverage than you are on the boundary side.
Yeah, it's the wide side of the field.
Yeah, you're playing the wide side of the field. So when we say the field side, it's, if the ball is on the left hash mark, you're playing, the boundary safety is playing on that short side of the field from that hash mark to the sideline, and the field safety is playing on the other side, the wide side of the field, where there's more ground to cover. You're usually putting, if you've got, a trips formation, you're going to have two of your receivers, you're going to have those receivers over on that wide side of the field to take advantage of that space, generally speaking. So that field safety is going to be played a lot more man, which is why having that background as a corner is helpful, because then you've probably been playing a lot of man coverage in your career. So having someone like Fuller, who came in as a corner, someone like Amir Reep, who came in as a corner, that's why that would be advantageous. The other thing that's kind of interesting about the position is Alex Grinch at one point referred to it as Falcon, which that's their internal name for the field safety. And someone said, "Oh, that's going to have a cool name." He goes, "Yeah, that's why we picked it." So that's the free. People always think of it as a free safety or a strong safety. Really, it's a field safety or a boundary safety for Ohio State, and the field safety is the Falcon. So, and then that strong safety position / boundary position, that you are kind of the deep guy. You're really playing that kind of center field Malik Hooker kind of position. So that's just so you understand kind of the difference between what those two positions are. Although Grinch did say this week, basically, they try not to have guys just be one or the other. They do try and get them comfortable with both, so that if they have to move around, that's not, some crazy, foreign thing where you're trying to do something left-handed. They want to be kind of comfortable in both spots so that they can move if they need to. I mean, that's sort of what we heard from Nick Bosa about the defensive ends a couple weeks ago as well, that they want to be able to play both ends, so it's not just a strong side and a weak side guy or a left and a right guy. They want to be able to kind of flip-flop. But in general, that's the skill set you're looking for from those two positions. And that's why in Isaiah Pryor, who came in as a safety and has that big size, that good speed, that's why he profiles so well at that boundary safety position, and why I would be really surprised if someone else won that job away from him.
If they won the job away from him?
I just talked for like 5 minutes uninterrupted. Come on. That was if someone else ended up winning the job over him. Sorry. I apologize.
You didn't win many grammar bees, did you?
Hey, Bixby.
Shut up. I can hear you. Zach Smith says a thing.
It's always listening.
It is, and it actually says that I'm listening, or it says Bixby is listening. Yes, I know, Bixby. I can see you. I'm going to turn my phone away so it can't also watch me. Zach Smith says the same thing about his receivers. You teach them every role. That way you're not locked into, like, well, this guy can only do this. You cross-train them. That helps them with any type of situation, helps them attack that. And talking about Zach Smith and the receivers, I thought it was interesting that Urban Meyer said they probably need to run the H-back more this year, which I've always been a proponent of. I'm not sure which. I guess I shouldn't have ripped on you, Tom. I apologize. That was a mistake on my part. But I do want to see the H-backs run more. And it's not just Demario. I say, like, every week I want Paris Campbell to run the ball more. I think it's a component to this offense that defenses don't like to deal with. And so why not do it a little more, even though obviously we always go back to, well, you've got J.K. and Mike Weber. Tom, I understand that. But I'm expecting a few more carries from the H-backs this year. Are you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think my general thought on the running game this year is, assuming it's Haskins, and I don't want to upset the International Brotherhood of Joe Burrow Teamsters that's also on the line right now, but assuming it's Haskins, if it's Weber and Dobbins inside, then you're going to use where you used to have a JT Barrett, reading the defensive end and either handing it to one of the running backs inside or Barrett keeping it to go outside. I think you're using those H-backs to run outside a little bit more. And, either that's on sweeps like we've seen some from them in the past, not a ton, or on those kind of touch passes, getting the ball outside, stretching that defense horizontally that way to help open up the middle. I think you're going to see more of that. And I think, it wouldn't surprise me if they had some kind of basically a variant on kind of the Navy triple option kind of flex bone look where, you can either give it to the guy, Weber or Dobbins going inside, or, maybe you have one of those H guys in motion and then you can pitch it to him on an option or, just a little toss sweep kind of thing out of that and give yourself a couple different ways to, a couple different choices on a play where you can run it inside, you can run it outside, and then, maybe you can set up a third choice off of there where you're passing it or whatever. If your quarterback is not your outside runner, maybe you're using your H guys more as your outside runners there.
Shannon, do you think is it robbing Peter to pay Paul to give the H back some carries, or are you okay with those guys maybe taking carries from Dobbins and Weber?
You realize that for, I don't know, the last how many years, one of the most common things that we keep hearing from fans or the media when they're talking to the coaching staff is, are we going to use the tight ends more and are we going to use the H-backs more? The 2016, why didn't Curtis Sam? Yeah. Why didn't he touch the ball X amount of times? And it's just, I don't understand why we seem to be having the same questions every year over these positions. And does the coaching staff get focused just on one group and forget about the others, or is it too complex to get everybody involved more?
Oh man, that was so annoying. After every game, did Curtis touch the ball enough? Were you happy with his touches?
It took him till the third quarter in order for him to have his first touch. Blah blah blah.
And what Urban Meyer would say each week is the offense is such that you take what the defense is giving you. That's where there's a void, and you attack that void. Or they're taking one thing away, they're leaving something else open. Yeah, that was after every game. Curtis Samuel only had 14 touches. He only had 12, and you can't just necessarily just hand the ball and force him up the middle, or you might have something designed for him, but if it's covered, are you going to force it to him? Yeah. Thanks for bringing that one up, Shannon. That was an annoying every Saturday.
You're quite welcome.
I was being facetious.
Well, it kind of goes with the press conference. It seemed like with Ari was asking Urban about the quarterback derby in 2015, if they learned anything from it. And it seemed like he took 5 different questions that were exactly the same, just kept wording them differently and kept getting the same result from Urban saying, I don't remember that year. We only lost one game and we don't look back in. I think Tom mentioned it earlier last show about, we don't look back in history.
Yeah, I was actually, that was Ari Wasserman from The Athletic who was asking that. And I was, after these sort of interview sessions, we all have to run over to the McDonald's because that's the only place with Wi-Fi and a bathroom. So we were both sitting there, and I was laughing at his question, the way he was asking it, because this is, 1 week ago, Urban Meyer was talking about, or a couple weeks ago, Urban Meyer was talking about the change in kickoff rule, the kickoff rule change that is being proposed. And he talked about how they've done a 5 or 6 year study on the effectiveness of how they do their kickoffs. And then on Monday, he gets this question, which he obviously doesn't like to be, I don't know. He always kind of bristles at the 2015 quarterback battle. But to say, we don't look back, it's not true, because not only did they look back on the kickoffs, but there are also times where we'll ask him a question about the past. He's like, we need to do a study on that, or somebody should do a study on this. Somebody should do a study on that. I don't think, because the question was have you learned anything that you could use from that quarterback battle and use it with this quarterback competition? I don't think it's an outrageous question, because we all look at that season and the first thing you think about is the way the quarterback competition was handled or the way it played out. And I wonder if, if it was Kevin Wilson and Ryan Day in 2015, Tom, this is completely out of the blue. Does Cardale Jones lead Ohio State to a national title that year as well?
I think Cardale Jones is a better fit for that offense. I mean, for the more pro style ish offense that I think Ryan Day and Kevin Wilson are sort of slowly implementing at Ohio State. So if Cardale Jones is your quarterback, you're better off with Kevin Wilson and Ryan Day as your offensive coordinator. I mean, if Joe Bauserman's your quarterback, you're still better off with those guys as your offensive coordinator because they're, Kevin Wilson and Ryan Day greater than sign Ed Warner and Tim Beck. So, I mean, that's sort of an unfair, I guess I sort of set up an unfair comparison there. But yeah, I mean, I think those guys as offensive coordinators are a better fit. Cardale Jones is a better fit with a Wilson/Day offense than he was under the 2015 coaching staff for sure.
With Ryan Day, Myers, Ryan Day had the 3-year contract extension, which I guess I don't know if that's an extension from his current contract, if it's like now a 4-year deal, but the fact that he's now on a 3-year deal, and which Meyer and even Gene Smith said earlier this year that assistant coaching jobs are usually like 1 or 2 year contracts, and it's up to the discretion of the coach. And so when we saw that Ryan Day's contract was 3 years, and obviously that's an interesting thing, and Urban was asked, did Ryan Day push for that? And Meyer said no, Meyer pushed for it. And I was wondering, did he push Day for it or did he push Gene Smith for it? And I don't think you would have to push Ryan Day for it. Listening to Day, he was asked, why did you stay at Ohio State? And he gave a lot of good answers, about how, I mean, for a quarterback's coach, there's not many better places to play. He wants to win a national title. His family likes Columbus. And I thought it was what Urban Meyer then said this week is, for a coach, it's not always good to be jumping around from job to job. And right now, and Urban didn't say this, but right now, Ryan Day is in a position where he may only need one more jump to find a job that he could have for the rest of his coaching career. Or maybe he's 2 jumps like Tom Herman. It has to be the right jumps. But, Dan Mullen could have been perfectly happy at Mississippi State for his career. And that was one jump from being offensive coordinator for Meyer at Florida. I think with Ryan Day, obviously he's going to eventually be the Ohio State head coach. But you don't have to just go to go. Like right now, you are as high as you need to be to get the job that you eventually want. It just might take a couple years before that job opens. Because maybe the job for you, like Tom Herman is fortunate that Texas came open when it did, and he could just, take that next rightful step and right in line with where he wanted to be. Because the job that you always wanted isn't necessarily going to be open. It worked out for Urban Meyer and Ohio State. But I could see Ryan Day filling out that contract if the right job doesn't come available.
Yeah, I don't think there's much question that if Urban had to sell anyone on that, it would be Gene Smith, based on like what you said. Gene Smith talked about with assistant coach contracts a little earlier this year. For Day, I'm not sure what the downside would be with a 3-year contract. If it's, he has 3 years now guaranteed, and, he's in a position where if, Urban Meyer's not going to coach forever, so we don't know whether Urban Meyer is going to coach 3 more years or 5 more years or 10 more years, but I mean, at some point he's not going to, he's not going to be the head coach at Ohio State anymore. And if Day builds himself a pretty solid, resume at Ohio State and continues to run pretty powerful offenses and put up a lot of points on the scoreboard and put up a lot of wins, that positions him as a potential successor there. I think there's Alex Grinch is another guy on that staff that we've talked about as another, future head coach somewhere, and he's young enough that he could, potentially be someone who we're talking about after Urban Meyer leaves, whenever that is. But, there's no downside for Day. It's not like you ever see, assistant coaches be offered a head coaching job somewhere and say, "Oh no, I'm sorry, I can't get out of this contract." It's 3 years of job security, and I'm not sure what the downside is. If he gets offered I don't know what's gonna come open next year. Well, I mean, Auburn comes open every 3 years, so let's say he gets offered the Auburn job or the Kentucky
Michigan
or the Kentucky job, or no, that'll be Ed Warner. If he gets offered the Auburn job or the Kentucky job or the Vanderbilt job or the Illinois job, if two magical recruits is enough to save Lovie Smith, whatever it is, it's not like that 3-year contract is going to prevent him from going somewhere. So there really is no downside for him.
What if, I think he went to New Hampshire. What if Mama comes calling, the alma mater, come home, be our head coach? I mean, how do you say no to that?
The Chip Kelly career path, New Hampshire to BCS or Power 5 job
to being
I don't know.
fired, and the NCAA doesn't want you around anymore.
Yeah, and then you get to coach in the NFL and do badly a couple places.
And then you go to UCLA.
So there you go. It all works out.
I'm thinking Ryan Day and Alex Grinch, you look at them and you could see both of them, maybe one day being the head coach at Ohio State. Tom, what about co-head coaches?
One is the head coach and one is the co-head coach. I think that's a pretty good way to do it.
Actually, at Ohio State, the way Urban does it, it's like, no, it's no co's. You're offensive coordinator, and you are also offensive coordinator. So athletic director Urban Meyer would hire Alex Grinch to be the head coach, and then he would also hire Ryan Day to be the head coach. And
the everybody gets a trophy org chart. I like it.
15 captains. All right. Let's I think that pretty much covers the what we've talked about, what we've seen from the teams, from the interviews. So I wanted to touch on a couple of topics. Shannon, do we have any new members of the hype train? Do you have anybody that? Oh no, you're not doing the hype train this spring, are you?
No.
Oh, Shannon. Don't you know that it's okay to get people's hopes up for the spring? Not everybody. Granted, people are still mad at stuff I've written about Dontre Wilson, and they'll never forgive me for that. But it's okay to put somebody out there, and if they fail, it's not your fault. It's their stupid fault. It's that player's fault for being a failure. So just think about it for next week. See if anybody pops up. Tom, you got anybody?
I mean, I have been driving the Austin Mack train for a while, and I might have suggested Jalen Harris here, but we talked on Wednesday about the little bit of concern about blocking potentially with him, which could keep him off the field. Although we keep hearing from players that he's someone who's kind of popped this spring, so he was certainly someone I would at least give some consideration, but. If I am adding anyone, and I feel like I have to, since Shannon's being derelict in his duties,
you don't have to.
No, but I feel like I have to. So I'm going to say Baron Browning, just because we keep hearing from Urban about him. We've seen little bits of him just as a true freshman. They're he's sort of the guy who's being groomed to be the new manager of the Chick-fil-A or whatever. They're putting him in positions where this is the kind of position you would put someone in to if they are going to be taking over at some point. So he's sort of been around the positions that and doing the things that they would want him to do if they were sort of grooming him for, future stardom, future kind of defensive captain kind of position. Urban has sort of talked about him as a future captain. And now with the injury to Tough Borland, there's something of an opening there on the defense. And even if Borland comes back, there's an opportunity for Browning to potentially step in there and take one of those starting jobs now that there's sort of an opening now. And he's someone that if he does get that starting job, he's not someone I see losing that job. I think once he's on the field as a starter, that's it. That's his job, and he's gonna, he'll end up a captain. So I'll add Baron Browning just so we have something, because we have to have opinions on it's the internet. We're required by law to have opinions, otherwise we lose our podcast license.
Even if he doesn't win a job, I'm with you. Urban Meyer and his coaches believe that he is going to be great, special. And if he can't this year, that speaks more to the guys that they also have, which is a good thing for the Buckeyes. And I go back to, I don't know if I said this on this show or the last show, when Urban was asked about Baron Browning this week, his face lit up. It reminded me like when I'm sitting here and I realize, like, you know what, I have time for a nap. There's nothing going on. If I've got a good 3 hours before I have to do anything, I could have a nap, and like your face lights up, the birds start chirping, the sun comes out, and you're like, oh, this is perfect sleeping. I can. Then like 5 minutes later, you're out, and I don't know if you guys are like me. I wake up and you're angry after waking up from a nap, because it should have been 6 hours. It was an hour and a half. You've been interrupted. But just the joy in his face, the excitement that when he talks about Baron Browning, there's a level of, there's more to what he's saying, because he's sort of being limited what he's saying because you haven't seen him do anything yet. But there's this understated understanding that just wait and you'll all see what we've seen or what we expect. So yeah, I could go along with Baron Browning on the hype train. I didn't really have anybody else because I don't. We've just seen so little. I was thinking maybe Isaiah Pryor. Joe Burrow. Once I saw him like with that tire, I mean, what more do you want out of quarterback? Because just imagine that tire being a football, right?
If Shannon is not, I mean, I know Shannon has not put anyone on the hype train, but Shannon has basically been putting Joe Burrow on the hype train all spring. So
that's true.
That's not a hype train. That's just I believe.
Maybe that's too much pressure to be putting on him, Shannon.
Well, he showed that tire and the rest of Buckeye Nation that Shannon's right. He's got grit. He's got moxie.
Oh no, let's not do that.
Oh no. Don't Matt McGloin him. Don't do it.
Demario McCall said a couple weeks ago that he is expecting 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns, and I think it's doable because Paris Campbell probably should have done it, but he gets tripped up like at the 7-yard line after a 90-yard return. 2 is a lot though, especially since I don't think Urban Meyer has had. He hasn't had one at Ohio State. I think Ohio State hasn't had one since 2010. So, Tom, I'll go put the line at 0.5 kickoff returns for a touchdown for McCall. Are you going over that, under that?
0.5 or 1.5?
0.5.
I'll go over 0.5, but under 1.5.
Yeah.
So I'm predicting 1.13 kickoff returns for touchdown this year, just if we're being really precise. I mean, like you said, they haven't had one since 2010, and the downside of having a really good defense, and I think they're going to have a really good defense this year, is you don't get to catch that many kickoffs. Like there are teams that run back multiple kickoffs for touchdowns in a season because they're giving up 60 points a game. Ohio State's going to have games where they only get 1 kickoff next year, and teams are cognizant of the fact that Ohio State has better skill talent than they do. So if they have a kicker that can kick it out of the back of the end zone, they're going to do that. So your kickoff return opportunities are going to be limited. I'm going to say he breaks one at some point during the year, but I think 2 is probably going to be stretching it.
They returned 14 kickoffs last year. I'm sorry, 28. So that was 2 a game because I'm pretty good at math. And, a couple of those are onside kicks. Now, Paris Campbell had 9. Mike Weber had 9. He took over for Paris. There's not a lot of opportunities, and those opportunities could be coming even fewer and farther between if that proposed kickoff rule were to come in, where a fair catch inside the 25-yard line would be a touchback, which we're all completely against it. I don't know if we are or not, but I just felt like saying that. Speaking of proposed rules, then this Tom, the red shirt rule that we've talked about before, and it's gaining steam where a player, a freshman, or anybody really can play up to 4 games at any point in the season and still retain their red shirt. The competition committee is talking about it, and I couldn't read the entire article that you sent me on The Athletic because obviously it's a pay site, and I don't pay for anything. I bootleg everything. I illegally download stuff. But how could anybody be, like, did it say, I don't know if you read it, like, how could anybody be against this? What are there any, like, legitimate arguments against it?
I read the article the day it came out because it was listed. It was a free link that day.
Yes.
And it did list some concerns about it. And then when I went back to read it again today, it was now back behind the paywall. And I'm also not a subscriber. So that's kind of a concern. But here's what, brace yourselves, dear listener, for podcasting excellence. Here's what I remember from an article that I read about 5 days ago,
crap.
even though... No, the short version is that everyone thinks this is a great idea. This is win-win-win-win. This is win for the players who get a chance to get on the field early. This is a win for the coaches who get a chance to, see some development out of their guys, sort of do some evaluation in real live game action, even and without burning that year of eligibility. It's a win for, the teams just in terms of depth and, at the end of the year when probably you're going to be putting in some of these true freshmen. That's the time of year when people have injury concerns, where you're starting to go through, there have been years where certain positions in the Ohio State depth chart have just gotten absolutely killed by injuries. So if you can then, during that November period where you're really down, you're down 4 linebackers or whatever it is, if then you can have some of these freshmen step in, add some depth, keep some people fresh, and not burn that year of eligibility, that's a huge win. And the fourth group it's a win for is the fans who, when you're watching the Independence Bowl, or, say your team comes into a year with big expectations and ends up playing in something just completely meaningless trash. Like, I don't know, let me pick one at random, like the Outback Bowl. I don't know. Just to pick one at random, the Outback Bowl. If you then have an opportunity to see some of these freshmen who haven't gotten on the field, the way people are hyped up for spring games because it's the first chance to see Tate Martell or some other freshman who you've heard hype about, you've heard, seen the recruiting rankings, you're all excited to see this guy play. If you're fired up to see Tate Martell play in a spring game, I would think you'd be even more excited to see Tate Martell play in a game that actually sort of counts for something. So, it's kind of a win for everyone. So the question then is, so what kind of a moron would oppose this? Well, It's the NCAA. So this is actually kind of a question. Basically, the short version is the rule as it's written was written kind of not great. Like they had left some loopholes in it. So, there's potentially some areas where it could get abused. Or there's at least some gray areas where there's sort of, some concern about it. So that's why it might not get adopted. And again, because it's the NCAA, of course, what's the dumbest possible way they could do this? If it doesn't pass this year, if it gets voted on and it doesn't pass, there's then a 2-year window where they can't implement it again after this. So because it was written kind of poorly, it might, this thing that is a win for literally everybody. There is nobody that this does not benefit. it might not pass because of concerns that it might be written in such a way that there might be loopholes or gray areas or whatever. And that could then open them up to issues, or, and if they vote on it and it doesn't pass, then you're waiting another 2 years before you can propose this, because it's all about the student athletes, guys. It's all about their well-being.
And Tom,
well, and in fairness, because I have the article up right now, so I'm gonna since I don't have the hype train, I'm gonna bring up the show quality here on this. One of the biggest issues here, where one of the pockets of resistance are coming from, is from the academic side, and the people that are going to be voting on this is the NCAA. I mean, not they have to give the final okay, is the NCAA board of directors, and also the other issue is other sports. Other sports are going to sit there and say, "Hey, if football can do this, basketball can be like, hey, why can't we do this?" It's some of them, like, it's kind of how you were saying with the wording and the loopholes that would possibly allow other sports to try to take advantage of this.
So what would be the problem if they did this in basketball? I am, again, failing to see an issue here.
I honestly, depends on the sport, I guess. I'm not sure. But the biggest thing is now you're looking at, I don't understand as far as the academic side. I mean, are they sitting there saying, all right, now you're worried that you're going to make kids go to school for 1 year more? You've already have a red shirt season, I will say 7 out of 10 times for players on your team. So they're playing for 5 years already if they stay their full 4 years after their redshirt season. So I don't understand really the complications behind it. I just think sometimes smart people overthink things.
I could see maybe some of the schools the smaller places who don't want to pay for everybody's fifth year, because then, not that everybody would get a fifth year, but you'd have more fifth year guys. But I also think those places already have a lot of fifth year guys and I don't really there's different rules for different sports. Baseball, for instance, I think Ohio State has around 12 scholarships total for the entire roster. Some guys get a quarter of a scholarship. Some guys get half. So there's different rules for different sports. I could see, one reason maybe somebody wouldn't like this. I could see why Urban Meyer would be against it. Because imagine, Tom, last year, Tate Martell comes in against Oklahoma, on a whim, ends up, Ohio State blows the Sooners out, say 48-7. And then, he plays a little bit in the next 3 games and shows obviously that he's the best quarterback on the roster. Now you've got to decide, do I do the smart thing and stay with Tate Martell, or do I go with my heart and put JT Barrett back out there, knowing that you've got arguably the best quarterback in Ohio State history in Tate Martell, but you don't want to hurt the feelings of a guy who you're really close to and who's one of the best guys you've ever met and have ever been around. So I think this rule, keeping this rule from being implemented, Tom, allows guys like Urban Meyer to sort of not have to play favorites with their favorites. Just my thoughts.
I think that's exactly what his concerns are. I mean, I didn't want to spell it out that way, again, out of concerns for, the feelings of people involved. But I mean, I don't think it's outrageous to think that that's exactly what his concern would be.
I don't think it's outrageous. All right. Speaking of outrageous, let's go ahead and get to the listener questions so that we can get those in this week and get you find people onto the rest of your day. Shannon, what's the first one we got this week?
All right. This one's from Spencer Brown. Weird off-season thought. Any take on Benjamin Victor becoming a bigger red zone deep threat this year? Seems like he would take on that role with Haskins under center. Also looks like those two have a good relationship.
I don't think that's a weird offseason thought. I think that's just a regular football thought. But I think you could become a bigger red zone threat. The deep threat, Tom, they just don't really. They would have to want to throw the deep ball more to that X receiver. Because think back to Michael Thomas. Like, they rarely threw him the deep ball. It's always, it's moving the chain stuff. And if you could take that slant or break a tackle and go with it, then that's good. Now, they did throw a little bit deep to Victor. They don't really do it for Mac that much. They save that deep stuff maybe for the Z and the H, but I'd like to see it more with those guys as well, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, red zone especially, those guys are both Mac and Victor are potentially really good red zone targets. I mean, Victor is 6 foot. This seems like a really good thing for me to have looked up. He's what, 6'4", 6'5", somewhere up there. I mean, I've stood next to him and he is legitimately that tall. He's not, this is not one of these people that they're sort of stretching the height a couple inches. He's a big dude, and you've seen him jump. He can get up. He's got the physical tools. He's bulked up since he's come to Ohio State. That was kind of the knock on him when he got here, was he looked like he was, a strong gust of wind was going to blow him away. And he's bulked up. He's done the stuff that he needs to. He's got the physical tools. He's got the size. He just needs to catch the ball. If he catches the ball, he's going to, he will be that guy. But he's had issues with drops, not all the time. What did he have? 9 touchdowns last year? I looked it up a week or two ago and was shocked at how many times he scored last year. I think he and Mac, I think he had like 9 touchdowns.
7.
Because Mac had 2. 7. Okay, 9 between them. So yes, I mean, 7 touchdowns was he a redshirt freshman last year? Or sophomore? Sophomore, yeah, he did play freshman year. So yeah, 7 touchdowns as a sophomore, you're already an impact player. You're already a red zone player. So, I mean, he's not going to put up David Sills, 20 touchdown numbers because you have so many other good receivers in this offense. But he is absolutely poised. If he can hang on to the ball, he can have enough playing time, and he's got the physical tools to absolutely be that guy. That's not, like you said, that's not a crazy thought at all.
Yeah, I don't think it's outrageous to see him with 10 touchdown catches or something like that. Because like I say with all of these guys, just double their numbers. And that's sort of what they'd be doing if they didn't have 6 quote-unquote starters. And so you're looking at Victor with 700 yards receiving and 14 touchdowns. I mean, those are legitimate numbers in an offense that is run first, but also has the ability to, they want to have the ability to do anything else in the passing game. And of course, they expect to throw the ball more this year with Haskins or Burrow or Martell. Maybe not Martell, but the passing game will be ramped up a little bit this year. Shannon, what's next?
All right, this one's from Zeke. I like to say thanks while you're in training camp or, off season for the Cowboys or listening to the show. Does Holtman get a free pass next year?
If he doesn't, then he should find another job anyway. He's definitely got a lot of credit built up, and you don't have to give him a free pass because he's going to get the most out of the team that they have. It won't be, I don't think it'll be this year. It won't be as good this year. But I still think it's going to be an entertaining brand of basketball. And for me, Tom, with new seasons, I don't mind watching a team sort of struggle a little bit if there's players that are worth watching. Like, there's going to be some young guys, some freshmen coming in, and some guys who are still finding their way. But as long as the effort and the potential is there, I'm okay with that. As opposed to, we harp on Mark Loving and Jaquan Lyle, but there's no redeeming entertainment value in watching those guys, knowing that we're just going to have to watch them again next year. Whereas with this group next year, it may not always be great, but you see that it will get better.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not going to start out great. I mean, this year didn't start out great. They lost a whole bunch of games early. They got absolutely smoked by Gonzaga early in the year and looked like they were going absolutely nowhere. And then, lo and behold, they sort of figured it out and it clicked and it got better and they turned into an almost Big Ten championship team and NCAA tournament team. That's a win. That's a win of a season. And next year, it's probably going to be pretty similar because they're not stripping it to the studs, but they are losing. They had 6 guys who played more than 12 minutes in the Gonzaga game, and 4 of them are gone this year. So you're not quite starting over, but you've got a lot of holes to fill, and they're probably going to end up bringing in a couple grad transfers. I mean, if they could bring in a point guard and someone who can score, that would go a long way towards helping next year. But yeah, I think he has built up. If anyone has been paying attention, he has built up a tremendous amount of credit already. And if you've been paying attention, you know that there are some pretty significant holes on this roster from classes that have just vanished, recruiting classes that have just vanished. So, Chris Holtman was very quick to give Thad Matta credit for helping to assemble the roster that he had when things were going well this year. I think if you've been paying attention to Ohio State basketball, you're going to also be able to give Thad Matta some credit for assembling the roster that isn't there next year.
Yeah, and he had a free pass this year and didn't use it. So now there is an expiration date to these free passes. I believe it's maybe 2 years. From the date that you accept. Once you get this free pass, if you don't use it within 2 years, you can't use it for the third year. At that point, the job is yours, and you need to be up to speed. Yeah, next year, I have the utmost expectation that they'll get as much as they can, and there won't be some sort of, well, look what I did last year. It's not going to be like that. That's not who these coaches are. What's next, Shannon?
Somebody in Ann Arbor doesn't agree with you. This is from Wisconsin area Buckeye. Leaving the spring game, which two players will we be talking about? Good or not so?
Gosh, I think there's always the backup quarterback is always the guy that comes out of this. So I think for me, Tate Martell is one of those guys that people are going to be talking about.
You stole my answer.
Just because, it was the same with like Kenny Guyton and Tate Martell.
Joe Burrow last year,
Dwayne Haskins last year, they were both pretty good. Now, the thing with Tate Martell is he's going to be wearing probably the black jersey, so he won't be maybe as effective on the run because he's just going to be touched down. I think also you'll see Chase Young and Jonathan Cooper getting some of those sacks, not just of Martell. But the defensive ends always, they have some good games as well. I think those guys will be some ones to look out for on the good. Not so good. The running backs generally don't look great because of the offensive line being split up, and also the offensive line doesn't look so great because the offensive line is split up. So I think that's the not so good they'll be talking about, even though there's plenty of offensive linemen. Don't worry about it. Tom, what do you got?
Yeah, we have to stay on brand here. So my good was Martell. Just he's the kind of guy who, when you're walking out of a spring game, everyone's sort of half paying attention for most of it, and so you're not keeping close track of stats and any of that kind of stuff. But he's the kind of guy who's going to make the one or two wow plays where, like you said, he's going to be kind of limited by being in that no contact jersey, but at some point he's going to spin away from a guy and juke someone out of their jock, and then, throw something 15 yards down the field. And that's going to be the one play that everyone remembers from the spring game. So he has that make you miss kind of playmaking ability that will resonate with people at a spring game in a way that a lot of the, a grinded out run game kind of, 6 yards of carry for a running back is not going to resonate with people the way, one remarkable, make guys miss kind of play will. And for the bad, I had center just because one or two bad snaps. That's something that even if you're kind of half paying attention in CDEC, you're going to notice it. That's one bad snap doesn't just blow up a play; it can blow up a whole drive. And we got to watch a very limited amount of practice on Monday, and we saw 2 bad snaps in a very limited amount of time. So even if those guys have pretty good days and there's just, 4 bad snaps in the game, that's going to stick in your mind. Because, like I said, people are not watching play to play, like keeping real close track of what's going on in every individual snap. But that's the kind of thing that just like a good Martell play will stick in your mind, a couple bad snaps are going to stick in your mind.
I'm thinking that a bad snap to Tate Martell may not be a bad snap to Dwayne Haskins, and I wonder how what kind of thought process I'm sure when they're snapping, they're thinking, chest or whatever, and that's the same for anybody. But obviously they're not perfect, and a little bit higher for Haskins or for Martell might still be just fine for Haskins, but I wonder if they have to sort of keep in mind that I need to keep these down, Martell, or if they're just like, well, it should always be in the breadbasket. There shouldn't be any worry about keeping it down. I don't know. Maybe I'd ask him about that on Wednesday, except that already happened because this is Friday. I should have asked, basically.
You should. Maybe we can go back in time and ask, and then we can write something that goes up before now. But we'll have to invent a time machine. But maybe we can make it happen.
If we've done that, check the site and read it.
Listen, and if we invent a time machine and go back to time to Wednesday, and then write an article that appears on Thursday, and then you're listening to this on Friday, and we've gone back in time for you, that we definitely deserve some 5-star reviews on iTunes. I mean, that's time travel. Like, if that doesn't merit a 5-star review, I don't know what does.
Although you'll probably get, a certain section of people who are like, 1 star, please do not mess with the laws of nature, the laws of physics. That is not your place. Where do you get off? Who do you think you are? 1 star, would not recommend.
Why would you waste it on Ohio State football practice when the enchantment under the sea dance is sitting right there to be messed with? Come on.
As you grow dimmer by the moment. What's next, Shannon?
All right, this one's from Indiana Buckeye. Has the format of the spring game been identified? 1s versus 2s, a draft, Scarlet versus Gray. How will the teams be split?
No, it hasn't, and it's usually a mishmash. The coaches put them together. I miss the old days of Jim Tressel inviting us in to watch the draft and to see the interaction between the players, because that's as fun as the spring game to me back then, to see who they think are the best players in each position. And I still remember the one year where I think it was A.J. Trapasso was drafted first because the punt is the most important play in football, but not in the spring game.
Hashtag B1G.
But no, it hasn't been announced yet. And I would expect it just to be coaches to try to put this group with, I think they try to generally keep like the first team offensive line together, except if you have any kind of ding or bruise, you're not going to play anyway. And if you do play, you're only going to play a little bit. So there's no necessarily rhyme or reason to it yet. But there won't be much rhyme or reason to it when they do set it either. What's next?
All right, this is from B-Deck Usher 79. B-Deck's going away. True or false, this is the best Ohio State team on paper Urban has ever had.
Now,
I know the answer.
Go ahead, Shannon. What do you got?
2015 on paper was the best team.
All right.
As far as being at Ohio State.
Okay. Now, my answer to this earlier was like, well, if it was that good, why did their quarterback get benched? But he got benched on the field, not on paper. And then I look at the 2014 team to see where were the weaknesses on that, and I would say maybe Tyvis Powell, maybe Steve Miller at defensive end, and I compare it to 2015 defensive ends were better. Safeties were the same. 2016 team, safeties were great. Well, except Damon Webb wasn't great. I think there's an argument to be made for this team. The only thing missing is like a Michael Thomas at receiver. But this team has more safeties than the other teams, has better defensive ends. I would not.
Didn't 2015 most of the offensive line come back?
Well,
if I'm not mistaken, I thought 14 was a rebuilding year, and 15, a majority of those guys came back.
Yeah, they didn't lose. They didn't lose much off that 14 team. They lost a few guys, but not much.
And I think that's where where the biggest edge. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And that's where you have the guy who's going to break all the Ohio State school records on offense, and the national championship winning quarterback, and the 2-time Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year, all on the same offense, plus Ezekiel Elliott, plus Michael Thomas, plus I had 2015 here. This is not a crazy conversation to have, which is a testament to how good the talent on this team is. But there are still question marks on this team. We can revisit this question in early September, and then we can revisit it again at the end of the year. But I'm real interested to see what happens with center. I'll be interested to see exactly how the corners shake out. I mean, Kendall Sheffield and Damon Arnett are good. They've played well, and you've got Jeff Okudah, you got Sean Wade right behind them, who have that potential to be really top shelf corners. And maybe this is the year Arnett and or Sheffield makes a leap. But I mean, there are question marks on this team. This is not a juggernaut at every position. I don't think.
The 2015 team also had Malik Hooker, who wasn't good enough to play yet. Marshawn Lattimore wasn't good enough to play yet. All of these guys that added depth. That 2015 team. That's why you have to leave it on paper. There's just so much to it. And maybe it's Michael Thomas maybe puts it over the top, the offensive line, obviously. But yeah, let's revisit that. This true or false. It will be like that version of true or false that they write it where it reads true and false. Let's go with that answer.
I think 2015 had better linebackers with Darren Lee and Raekwon McMillan, and then you have to look at as far as the cornerbacks. You had Conley on that team, and I believe you had Eli Apple also. So I think they have more. They were more seasoned, more veteran group. I mean, before the season even started in 2015, they're talking about that this team's going to break every single scoring record in NCAA football, and they didn't have the offensive coordinators to figure it out. So
yeah, we shouldn't blame the team for that, I guess. What's next?
All right, this one's from at Jason33887. Do you think the Big Ten plans to expand? If so, what 2 teams do you see them getting, and what 2 teams do you hope or wish for them to get? Hashtag offseason talk.
This is more June talk than March, April talk. Oh God! Now my laptop has been activated.
Is your laptop from a company whose AI assistant is named June Off-Season Talk? Because that would be kind of a weird name. While Gerd goes through technological meltdown, I'll help answer this question. The Big 12 has a grant of rights for media until June 2025. So everyone sort of assumes that the Big 12 imploding is going to be the next sort of catalyst for the next round of conference realignment, and that's not going to happen until 2025, because what a grant of rights means basically is you are signing as a school, your rights to your media. So, when your league signs a deal with ESPN or, for Fox or whatever network, your rights as a university, you have signed those over to your conference, and then your conference distributes that money to you. So it's basically if Texas wanted to leave the Big 12, they could leave the Big 12, but until 2025, every cent that they got from whoever, if they left to join the Big 10, every cent that they got from the Big 10 would go to the Big 12. So that's really not in Texas's best interest to do that until June 2025. Once that happens, that's probably when you're going to see the next round of dominoes fall.
Right.
So that's kind of the first part of that question. And the next part of the question, who is it going to be? The fact that that's 7 years away, The last round of conference realignment was based on cable TV households, which, congratulations, now you have Rutgers. Good luck getting that. Good luck getting that out of the house. So
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. You have to put a tent over your house to fumigate to get the Rutgers out.
Take a tomato soup bath. A tomato.
Yeah. So the last round was based on cable TV households. I don't want to spoil anything for you if you haven't, if you've been living under a rock, but the next round is probably not going to be based on cable TV households because the whole model for all of media is sort of changing right now, and anyone who says they know what's going to happen in 8 years or 7 years is lying to you. So it's real hard to say. Is it, is the next round going to be based on maybe it's based on media rights and you're negotiating with Facebook or Amazon or whoever the big company is at that point. But, until, and in that case, maybe you're just going based on schools with big fan bases, and it doesn't matter, what your home state is, because Rutgers has a small, crappy fan base, and the fact that they have a whole bunch of people who live in Atlantic City or Newark or anywhere else in New Jersey, Trenton, then that doesn't matter because they don't care about Rutgers football, so therefore they're not going to pay for the Rutgers TV product, and they're not being held hostage by a cable company who you're getting your $1.25 for the Big Ten Network regardless of whether anyone watches it or not. So the short answer is no, it's not going to happen for a while, and when it does, we don't really know. As for who it is, well, I'll have talked for 17 minutes in a row, so I'll let you guys talk first about who you want to see in that next round.
I going to like the grant of rights. It's basically the Big 12 is, say, Texas's pimp, and even if Texas wants to go to another pimp, they can't because contractually they're bound to the Big 12 pimp, and so all of their money that they make goes to Texas, and if Texas wants to, goes to the Big 12 because that's who protects them when they're out there, and so the one thing you can't ever do is leave your pimp. So
that sounds like personal. That sounded like personal experience speaking right there.
In terms of the teams, I mean, obviously for me, the first two are Texas and Notre Dame. I think those are the two most obvious, and it's been that way forever. And if it happens, who knows? I mean, Shannon, what do you got?
I was thinking Texas and Oklahoma. You got to keep Oklahoma with Texas in order to keep that Red River rivalry going.
Oklahoma has some academic. I mean, academically, Oklahoma is not quite at the level that like a Texas is, and I mean, the Big Ten loves to fashion itself in academic. I mean, theoretically, nominally, these are institutions based upon higher learning and not just football. I mean, it doesn't always seem like that, but theoretically, that's the objection to Oklahoma. So when you see people talk about Oklahoma going to the SEC instead of the Big Ten, that's what that's based on. And that's, again, we're talking about 7 years in the future, so who knows? I mean, Oklahoma may have landed an astronaut on Mars by then. Who knows?
Well, they could be AAU certified by then, or
sure.
Just a simple fact that Nebraska was AAU certified when they joined the Big Ten, but they let their certification go, so they no longer are. So,
yep.
I mean, might that be able to be a loophole for Oklahoma?
Yeah, sure, good. Go ahead, Gerd.
Tom, you say that Oklahoma could put a man on the moon. I don't know that we're that advanced in slingshot sciences, honestly.
The next step of Lincoln Riley's passing offense. First, the end zone, and next step, the moon.
Yeah, I think the whole the loophole. I mean, there is precedent set now that there's a school that's not at you, but I mean that's so far down the road. I don't. If the football program is still strong, I think that might almost outweigh it. But I think there's also a move that they don't want to make this a habit either. Well, we'll see. I think eventually you'll have super conferences, but like Tom said, that there's so much unknown to even say that this is how it's going to be. We don't know because streaming is more bigger than ever, and who knows what those packages are willing to pay conferences. There's so many unknowns to even venture a guess.
And what's I mean, you mentioned Notre Dame, and I think that's actually intriguing to have like Notre Dame. But what is their contract with the ACC? Because they can't sign with another conference for football for what 20? I mean, is that around the same time?
I don't
Because if they sign with the conference as far as football, it has to be the ACC until X date, which I think is maybe about that time or something like that too.
Yeah, it's somewhere in that like 2025, 2030 kind of range, I think. I don't remember the exact date, but I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but Notre Dame isn't really located particularly close to the ACC, so it doesn't really make a whole heck of a lot of sense. But Texas isn't located particularly close to the Big Ten, so maybe that doesn't matter anymore.
All right, we've got a question here about the tough Borland injury, and we've already sort of addressed that situation. Let's go to the final question so we can get everybody out of here. Go ahead, Shannon.
From Van Gogh.
No, skip that
what's
one.
your favorite?
The last question.
We haven't done the Brady Hoke thing that I wanted to do yet. Come on, we can't skip everything.
All right, this one's from some guy named Tony Gerdeman. What is your favorite cartoon food as a kid?
Well, and I said you don't have to be. It doesn't have to be as a kid. I was just thinking of, for me, the answer is the original boneless wing, which is the Scooby snack, which they were able to get Shaggy and Scooby to do anything for what must have been the most amazing piece of whatever it was ever. So yeah, I think Scooby snacks. Now I know, Tom, when I posed this question to you, you were like, I have my answer immediately. So now I'm intrigued. What is it?
Homer J. Simpson's patented space age moon waffles. Waffle batter, caramel, liquid smoke. I mean, who could say no to that? I have an established history as a pancake chef on this website, so the leap from pancakes to waffles is not that great. And I have a waffle iron, so I'm pretty much already there. It's kind of
waffles are better than pancakes.
It's kind of I mean, that's that's a far better take than Gerd's take on boneless wings, so that's fine. I'll allow it.
What about the sacrilegious waffle on the ceiling? Or the floor pie?
The floor pie, yes. Floor pie. Now, Gerd brought up the gummy Venus de Milo too, which is another excellent option.
Shannon, did you have one? Did I ask you?
No, you didn't ask me. But I was a fan of. You mentioned about the Scooby and Shaggy, Shaggy's club sandwiches, if you will.
That's the other one.
Those Garfield's lasagnas.
Oh, that's good.
And oh man, I just had the other one on my. I'm a huge pizza fan, so Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle pizzas.
I don't know that they looked all that great. I'm with you on the any sandwich that Shaggy and Scooby made. Basically, I just want Scooby-Doo food.
Those things were huge. Yeah,
I shouldn't have watched.
Shaggy was always eating. You could tell Shaggy used to smoke a little weed.
Quite.
Where are you getting this from? I don't think that was even implied in the show.
All right, and then we'll close out the show with what Tom has been waiting 2.5 hours now to talk about.
So, I don't know, dear listener, if you have been blessed enough to read the Brady Hoke text from the FOIA request for John Curry, the former athletic director at Tennessee. Tennessee just did this like incredible document dump this week where they just, as soon as they settled Curry's case, they just dumped everything, which it's pretty unusual to, when you file a Freedom of Information Act request, a lot of times you'll get something that's like, oh, we don't, we need more specifics. Oh, we don't have anything that's really responsive to that. Oh, or they'll redact, black out a bunch of stuff so you can't read, you get something, but it, doesn't really show you anything. Tennessee just dumped it. They just took everything that John Curry had on his phone and just said, here you go, world, have at it. So there's all sorts of amazing stuff in there. They had Curry, at some point Curry's phone number got out. So just random Tennessee fans were including him in group texts about the coaching search, which went about as well as you could possibly think. Like, I'm sure he was blocking these conversations as soon as they happened, but they're still in the records because they went to this phone number. So in all of this hilarity, he's getting included in group texts about like the flat Earth theory and that. I mean, it's just incredible. But the best part in this whole thing was Brady Hoke, who was an assistant football coach at Tennessee last year, texts Curry, and it's just such a window into the man's soul. He texts in all caps, like everything is all caps. Like there is not a lowercase letter anywhere in any of his texts. He also doesn't use punctuation much at all. Punctuation is the headset of the English language to Brady Hoke. It's run-on sentences and then like one period in the middle of a paragraph, maybe, and then a period at the very end, maybe. I'm just going to read you a couple of these real quick. And I don't do either of you guys do a good Brady Hoke impression?
Not this late at night.
No, not that. Okay.
No.
I don't know if I can pull it off.
I just had that the philosopher YouTube video stuck in my head.
Yes. So here I'll give it to you. John, I hope you do know I would like to be your head football coach. I do know the environment we live in and what needs to be done at Tennessee! Exclamation point. That was it. That was all one sentence. Exclamation point. But the best one was this one. John, I know that this has been a hard. Dave Brandon has gone through the mob mentality, as have I. It made me better, and it sucks. Period. That was all one sentence, too. We're behind you, and if I can be of any help, let me know. So he sends this with the clue. I've been through this with Dave Brandon. I have already texted you that I'm a football coach, and I'm interested in your head coaching job.
This is Brady.
And what does he get back? I'm sorry, who is this? He got no new phone who dissed by his own athletic director. It is whatever you think about Brady Hoke and his intellectual capacities and ability to function as a human being in today's modern society. It's all laid bare before you right there, and then he gets new phone who dissed. It's only March, but this is the clubhouse leader right now for the funniest thing I've seen all year.
And
so I was going to say the winner to your caption this was him asking Urban, "Did you get my text?"
But I like the fact that he's like, hey, I went through some tough times in Michigan too. Like, what kind of sales pitch is that? Like, hey, I was pretty bad at a place once. We had some really tough times. I know it's tough here too. I mean,
hey, we're the Michigan of the South.
I don't know if comparing your boss to Dave Brandon is a great way to ingratiate yourself. This is a guy who has failed at pizza, college football, and toys. Like, how can you screw up pizza, college football, and toys? And so this is the guy you're going to compare your boss to. So, I know you're a moron like Dave Brandon, so you should hire me, because he did.
Look, I failed at plenty of places. I know what this takes. I know what it's like. I can deal with the media when, while the ship is sinking. I did. You did a nice job with the Brady Hoke impersonation. You put me right there in the same room as his text. Nice job. I
probably needed to yell a little bit more, but I don't want to wake up my kids or disturb my dog. So.
But I was thinking like maybe those texts he would just block those just as well, like more bull crap. I got to get back.
Is this the flat? Yeah. Is this the flat Earth guy again?
I got to get back to my flat Earth group text. Sorry, Brady, I'm busy right now.
I think to close the show, instead of using the song, I'm just going to play the Brady Hoke philosopher YouTube video in the background, so that way people can enjoy that magnificence of it.
You're going to make the show like
Brady Hoke.
You're going to add like 6 minutes onto the show. And all right, we've got enough. We've done enough show for today and for yesterday and the day before. So thank you, everybody.
And go Loyola.
How did they do last? Oh, no, they play tomorrow, right? Saturday. Yeah,
I believe. Yes.
What's the line on that? 5.5. Michigan favored by 5.5.
I have not looked, but I'm a fan of Sister Jean just because of Jalen Rose's mom calling her out. Old people, senior citizens being mean.
I do not like Jalen Rose, and I've never tweeted at him, but he's blocked me. Whereas I'm not blocked by many people, but I don't
just
like
me and
him.
Jalen Rose.
Just you and
just
Jalen.
Me and Jalen Rose.
And yeah, you're pretty much two peas in a pod. But all right, let's go ahead.
Speaking of Jalen Rose and the Fab Five, just real quick. The Chris Webber, because hold on, time out. What was that comment that he made at one of the games that the other announcer was like, "What the hell are you talking about?"
You're gonna have to narrow it way down for Chris Webber or Jalen Rose. I don't actually mind Chris Webber on the broadcast, but I can't listen to anything Jalen Rose says because just his inflections, like everything he says is the first time it's ever been said, and he's very impressed with everything he says. And now he's going to be on the new Mike Greenberg show, and I'm not going to be able to watch it because I can't deal with him, which makes me feel really, really sad and old. And I'm like, I can't watch the Mike Greenberg show.
That's the nicest thing he's ever done for you.
Thank you, Jalen Rose. All right. All right. Anything else, Shannon? Any other things you want to throw in while I'm trying to get away?
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, run. So thanks everybody for.
And another thing was.
Thank you everybody for listening and putting up with everything. We appreciate it. We will talk to you next week. Make sure to check out the rest of the shows on the Ozone Radio Network. You can go ahead and on at theozone.net, I created some drop downs. So if you go to the Hayes and Cannon tab and you mouse over that, go down to podcast, you mouse over that, and it brings up all of our shows, our weekly shows. And you mouse over each show, and the flyouts will come out for the last 10 shows or whatever, or you can go ahead and click on each one of those podcasts, show titles on the shows, and get all of the podcasts up on a page all by themselves. So go ahead and check that out if you're looking for past episodes, or if you just need more football talk because you didn't get enough here, obviously. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for leaving the reviews on the iTunes. That always helps. And if you're listening and you haven't done that yet, which most of you have not, I'm not going to say any names, but if you want, that would be great. Thanks everybody. We will talk to you next week.